Well, welcome back. 2011 Toyota Sienna. This car's been in here before. I'm going to do rear brakes on it. Rear brakes have been done on this, and I think I have a video on this. We're going to do another video on it. I've had a couple people ask about parking brake in the last couple of weeks, so on this particular vehicle. So I'm going to make sure I show that, how I adjust them, how I do that. And we're going to replace rotors. Where I live, rust is a pretty big issue, a really big issue. It's what you're fighting all the time. I'm going to go to a fully coated rotor on this. They just last longer. I have a lot of problems with the rust ridge on the outside edge of rotors, or the inside edge inside of the drum where the rust builds up. Either hangs the drum up trying to get it off, or the parking brake on a rotor, or just wears the pad unevenly and because of that rust ridge, and it gets in the veins of a vented rotor. So I'm going to go fully coated rotor on this. I'll show you that during the filming, and we're just going to do maintenance, rear brakes on this 2011 Toyota Sienna. All right, we're looking towards the front of the car. Right at the caliper, 14mm bolts here. Hold the caliper in place. 17mm to hold the bracket, caliper bracket to the hub or spindle. Hopefully the lighting turns out okay here. I'm just trying to, it's always a battle with lighting, just is. Trying to get some decent light. I'll have to move you around a couple times, but I'm just going to loosen these 14mm and then loosen the two 17mm and remove the caliper and remove the caliper mounting bracket. I'll just set these aside for now. Take that bottom one out. Almost what I want to do though, before I do that, get a screwdriver. Kind of go in between the pad and the rotor here, or the backing plate and the rotor, backing plate and the caliper, and just push it out so I have plenty of room and I don't have to worry about it hanging up, getting stuck coming off of there. Just going to take this off, set it up here. Before I push this piston in, I want to push this piston in. Before I do that, I'm going to sand the face of this piston and sand these tabs out here. This is an aluminum caliper, so the aluminum side of it, the tabs don't get really corroded very badly. I don't know what I did with my piece of Scotch Brite. There it is. So I can just Scotch Brite them. If they're corroded badly, then you need to file them. You don't want to take the metal off, you just want to take the corrosion out of there. So I'm just going to go in here, clean these off. I use a cookie wheel, but you can use a piece of sandpaper or whatever you have to do the face of the piston. That's steel, so it does get a little more corrosion. These are actually pretty clean. Just kind of cleaning them off a little bit. Let me get a cookie wheel. Pair of glasses. I do have glasses on for this. I do like my eyes. Just come in here, and lighting is just giving me grief today. Maybe a little too bright. Right in here and just clean the face of this piston. I like to do that before I push the piston back in. That way I don't have to worry about hitting the boot, tearing the boot up. Come here. Come on over here. I'm just going to go in and clean a little bit of dust out of this. Just scraping it off here. I don't know if you can even see that, but just kind of coming in here. It's probably right in the shadow. Just kind of scraping it off as my hand blocks what you're trying to look at, maybe. Right in here. Just scraping that out. Just dust on the brake pads. Clean that up a little bit. And of course, somewhere here, chemical 1001 uses. Pretty clean. Oh, I just dropped the top off of it. That's great. Try to fix that. Oh, it works. Clean this off. Let that dry. Just let that sit there and dry. Now, come back here. You can do this with a wrench. I'm going to do it with a gun because I have one. A 17 millimeter. Now I'm going to use a wobble, or you won't be able to get to it. You have to use a wrench. You got to get around the shock. So, shock's kind of right in the way, especially the top one. You have a wobble extension. Not hard at all. At least the other side wasn't hard. This shouldn't be. Get the bottom one first. Blocking your way, I know. There's one. Right off of there. Down. Go around in front of the shock and get the top one. I'm probably blocking everything before we do that. Okay. That's it. The bolt. Catch my bracket as it falls off. Like I said, I know the history of this car. I did the brakes on this before. They're getting close to needing, they wanted them done, so I'm getting them done. Switching to coated rotors on this, and I'll show you the part numbers. Always replace the hardware. Always grease behind the hardware. Okay, so I'm going to go over, these are actually pretty not bad. I'll take them to the wire wheel. If they're corroded badly, take a file, come in here, clean out, get the corrosion off of them, and maybe a piece of Scotch-Brite or something, clean them up really well. We're going to re-grease them. Check your boots, make sure there's no cracks, dry rotting, things like that. I did the parking brakes on these not long ago, so they're actually should be in good shape, and they're greased well. I'm not even going to touch them because they're in really good shape. If I didn't know the history, I'd pull them and re-grease them, but I actually know the history of this, so I don't need to do it. But if, you know, brake grease, use brake grease in there. Not a lot. You just want a little thin coating on the pins. So if you do this and you clean these out and you're going to re-grease them, let me pull this out of here. Come on. You want a thin coat on that and stick it back in there. And when you push it in, you may have to kind of burp on a little bit with a small screwdriver. Don't poke a hole in or anything, but sometimes they'll get air in them. You have to work the air out of them, kind of burp them a little bit. But these are actually in very good shape. I'm going to leave them alone. They don't need to be done because I just did them not too long ago. Alright, so you're looking at the front of the rotor. There's a plug here, rubber plug. I'm going to take that rubber plug out. You can use a screwdriver to do it or a pick. Just use a pick, grab it, pull it out. That's your access to your parking brake adjustment. A couple people have asked me about parking brake, like I said, in the last couple of weeks. On this particular car, it's at the bottom. So I have to look in here and find my adjuster. I know it's right at the bottom. It's just hard for me to get a good look and get a good look at it here. All right, probably be quicker if I just do it by feel. I'm going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to adjust this. Let me find it. Right there. I just adjusted it up and tightened it. So now, one way adjusting it up, adjusting it one way will tighten it, and the other way will loosen it. You want to loosen it so you can spin it easy, pull it off, basically. So this is why we're doing these. We're making some noise, but this is the rust ridge that builds up on the inside edge and the outside edge of these around this area causes problems. So that's why we're going with a fully coated rotor here. And that way we won't get that. It'll be coated. This is greased. This face of this hub. And you see it's still in really good shape. I'm just going to get in here, spray the hub down, wipe it off. Like I said, I did these parking brakes not long ago. And so I'm not going to spray all in there because I can still see all the grease in there and everything that I did. I don't want to have to redo that. If you're doing the brakes in there, you want to grease everything. You know, parking brake. I am gonna put some grease back on the back edge, not on the pad, but behind the pad on the metal edge where it rides against the drum here. Hub. I shouldn't say drum. They don't have drums. going to clean this off and re-grease it before I put it back on there. These are fully coated, the rotors that are going on here, so it probably won't be an issue. But if you don't have coated rotors, they tend to hang up right around the center flange, and they can be really hard to get off of there sometimes. So you always put a light coat of high temp grease on there, just so they don't stick. I'm going to reach back in here, just pry these pads out a little bit. I don't want to take them all apart, and then I'll talk a little bit about that parking brake, since a couple people said something about it. You can see some stuff there. So there's 3 pads that it rides on. Actually, I can still see the grease in there, but we're going to add just a little more, and I'm going to clean that off. I just made a mess there, but I will clean it off there, and all the way down the bottom is one. All the way in here. I'm just going to get a little bit of grease on those pads that it rides against. I got to clean that up since I'm a bit sloppy. Don't want grease on there. Clean that off. Good. I don't want to get grease on that. I'll do the same thing on the other side. That is brake grease, by the way. Can't use regular grease. It has to be brake grease. I'll show you what I use. Metal to metal contact. Looking right into my light so you can't see anything. That's what I use. Silicone. Actually, Ceramic Extreme Permatex. Part number is 24125. Metal to metal. That's what I use it for. Some I've heard, some manufacturers too, being one of them, the rubber boots don't like that particular grease. I've never had an issue with it, but rather than have an issue with it, I just use the silicone Permatex brake grease instead of Ceramic Extreme, and that doesn't seem to have any issues. I use that for the slides that I showed earlier, the pins. The pins. Anything, really the pins. Anything that has that goes into rubber. I want to use that stuff. And I've heard, like I said, I've heard people had problems with it, certain issues with it. I've never seen it, but I don't want to have an issue with it, so I have both types. I do like the purple, the Ceramic Extreme for metal to metal. It's got a little different consistency. It's a little stiffer. I just like it a little better for that. Thin coat, not a lot, just a thin coat. Especially make sure you get around that flange good. Okay, that's ready. Alright, let's talk a little bit about this parking brake here. So I'm not going to grease this because, like I said, I was just in here, did this parking brake not long ago, these parking brakes, so I know they're greased and they're okay. If I was doing the parking brakes on here, I'm going to take this adjuster and pull it apart, and I'll link to my other video where I might have showed this. I'll link to one of mine. I know I've showed it in at least one of my videos. And I would clean it really well, and I would grease inside of it so it moves easy. So you can see this one moves real easy. It's not hung up. That's what I want. And so what this does is you turn this wheel, it either adjusts the pads in, or pushes them out. And so what I like to do is bring them all the way in. Hopefully I'm going the right way. I don't know. I can't see. I can't tell. All right, I was going out. This is all the way in until they stop. So it stops. So the pads are all the way in as small as possible at this point. And then what I will do is you want to line your hole up with this indent on this car. There's an indent in the hub right here. And here's a part number. Hopefully you can read that. I'm not going to read it to you because I can't see. It's facing you. So here's the rotors. Fully coated. No need to, in fact, you should not try to clean these. Just keep your grubby hands off of them like I tried to. So you can see the hole down here, right here, my fingers right next to it. That's the adjustment hole. So I want to line that up with that indent in the hub down the bottom here. So now I can reach in there and adjust this. Alright, there's my bracket. Hopefully you can see it's been cleaned up. Now, I'm going to come in here with some of that Ceramic Extreme and I put a thin coat behind where the hardware goes, behind this. There are varying, I guess, I'm trying to think of the right word, arguments, opinions on where you should grease. Some people grease on top of the hardware. I don't do that. You can do what you want. Good hardware, stainless, doesn't rust, and I find that the grease on top of it just collects grime and stuff from the road and brake dust. This is in here, put on here, just to keep moisture out. Keeping moisture out, stopping corrosion from getting in there. Now, the open end of this little tab here, right there, it's open. Let me put this down and show you. See, I'm like right on top of you. Let me back you up a little bit. There's an open end here. Trying to get it where you can see it there. That has to go towards the center. Towards the center of the... actually, I want to go this way. Of the bracket. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the pads in there. The pads are going to push in against that. So definitely want to do that. Do all 4 of them. Put them in. I don't know how my lighting's doing today. Like I said, it's always a struggle with lighting. It just is. 3rd one, put that in there. Try to get it where you can see it. And the 4th one. Make sure they face in. Like that. All my hardware's in place now. Okay? Now, there's also, with these pads, there's a little indicator right here. Right there. Clips on the pad. I've got it clipped on. I should have left it off. It just clips right on in. You push it on. That faces obviously towards the wear surface, so when it gets close, it starts hitting that. You want to put them on there, 1 for each pad. I like to put them on the edge of the top. They weren't on the other set. They didn't have them, so probably didn't come with it because I did that set. Probably didn't come with that hardware, but it's good to have indicators. We're going to put these back on. I'm just going to, actually I'm going to get my 2 bolts here. I'm going to clean them up. I'm going to clean them on the wire wheel. Put a little bit of thread locker on them, move it back. All right, I've cleaned my bolts up. We're just going to rehang this, put these 2 mounting bolts back in place. I ain't going to be able to see this, but I'm just putting 2 bolts back in. Get it in place and we're ready to go. We'll move you over to the side again. Actually, let's adjust the rotor. Let me put a lug nut on there temporarily. Get a bolt here. I'll just put one on. Hold it in place. Make sure it's tight up against the hub. And then we're going to adjust this. So I'm going to reach in here and find that star wheel I showed earlier. Gotta find it. Should be right in here. There it is. You can hear the spring. I'm pushing it. I'm actually rotating it from bottom to the top on this side. That's still not yet. It's getting close. Real close. So I'm going to turn it till it stops. Stopped. I can't turn it now. It won't move. Then I'm going to do it the other way and just back it off a little bit. Come on. It's giving me grief right now. Come on. Got a little too much. So I like it a little bit tighter than that. Gotta find it again. It's right in there. There it is. That's tight again. That's about how I like them. A little bit of drag, not much. You run it, it'll get that drag will go right away. But it's not hanging up, but it's close. That's kind of how I like to do my parking brakes. Now, before you get nuts here, put your stopper back in, because we push it all the way through. You got to take it apart to get it out. So, ask me how I know. Not that I've ever done that. Well, yeah, of course I have. All right, so now take this back off. I'm going to tighten this up now. Now I'm going to move you. That's we're looking kind of right at the side of the rotor. I do want to snug these up before I start putting this together. Let me tighten these up. They do have a torque spec. I don't know what they are on this. I really don't. If you're that concerned with the torque spec on these, then you can look it up and torque them. I just know they have to be tight. Okay. Grab my caliper up here. My light, just like that, because it was just giving me grief, so I'm not even using it. Get that ready. I'm going to put my pads in first. These pads happen to be the same inside and outside. There's no difference. Like I said, I want my... I want them at the top. That's just how I want them. So I'm going to set this in to the bottom first. Push that tab and then line this top up. And I should be able to push that right in. If I get it lined up right, it'll go right in there. Got to get it lined up right though. The other side didn't give me grief. This one probably will. Let's try the top first. Let's see. Let's just see if we can get this. Now it's just going to fight me. It's just going to fight me. Alright, let me do the outside one first. Maybe be able to see that one a little better. Come on. Turn it in there. There you go. Push it into place right in against the rotor. Same thing on the inside. Turn it in. Just got to get it lined up right. There it is. Squeeze them against the rotor. It's ready to go. Now, make sure you don't twist this flexible line up. These bolts just need to be snugged up. Don't crush these. They're not big bolts. They're just snug them up. I didn't push my piston back in. Alright. You have to push your piston back in. So I got to push this back in. I have a tool. You can use a C-clamp or a big pair of channel locks if you have them. I have a tool for it, which is here somewhere. I set it down and there it is. I use an old pad. Take an old pad, stick a pad up against there, and just press them in. Not a big deal. Hopefully you can see that. Oh, it's probably high. Let me show it to you once I get it in there. Get it over here. Maybe you can see a little better. So I just have that lined up with a pad in there, an old pad. I just press it in. Press this piston all the way back into the bore. You may have to burp this boot on this too. Sometimes they'll get air in them, but you can get that air right out. It's not a big deal. We'll see how this one went in. Now this one went in without any problem. Sometimes they'll be bulged out. You can stick a pick right along the edge of the, or a little screwdriver right along the edge of the piston, between the boot and the piston. Don't put a hole in it, and just kind of press out on it, and that lets the air out of it, basically, if any air gets trapped in there. Alright, so I have to grease these as well, which I didn't do yet. Grease the face of the piston here. I don't know if you can see that. It might be off camera. Might be a little high. Maybe you can see it. And then we'll put a little bit of grease. On steel, you know, Helps with corrosion. Aluminum calipers doesn't really, but it does help to reduce vibration and noise too. Makes them run quieter on the outside tab. Get them greased just a little bit. Thin coating. Now we can put them on. I'm just going to hang my top. Like I said, don't twist your line up. Make sure you don't twist your flexible line. Just going to hang my top bolt up here and get it started. That'll hold it in place, get my bottom started. Line that up just like that. Now there's probably a torque spec on these as well. I don't know what it is. And like I said, if you're that concerned about it, you can look it up. But I'm just going to snug them up. They don't have to be super tight, they just have to be snugged up. That's it. Should move freely, which this one does. You see it sliding in and out. That's how it should be. That's pretty much it. Basic maintenance, brakes. I'm going to take this out before you drive it. Pump the pedal till it gets firm. Make sure it's firm and you get a little bit of a scary moment. And then I'm going to bed these pads. So you need to bed the pads on the rotors. And how I generally do that is I'll take it out and drive it up to about 40, 50 miles an hour and then slow it down to about 5. I don't want to come to a complete stop. And I'll do it, drive another quarter, half mile, let it cool down a little bit, and do the same thing about 8 to 10 times and let it bed the pad onto the rotor and get that. There's different types of pads work differently. Ceramic pads work by adhesion, what they call adhesion, and semi-metallics don't work the same way. They work a little differently, but they both need to be bedded. So we're going to bed this pad, and then that's it. It's not a very hard job. It's just basic maintenance. Just do your maintenance. I say it all the time. Do your maintenance. Your car will last a lot longer. This car's got 200 and maybe 90,000 miles on it. At this point, still runs really well. It's in really good shape. Maintenance gets done on it, and it keeps going. You'll just have a lot less problems if you just change your oil, do your brakes, do your regular maintenance. Well, that's it for the rear brakes on this 2011 Toyota Sienna. Went to a fully coated rotor. I realized I didn't give you the part number for the pads. Here are the part number for the pads. Now, you can read that, right? EHT 139-1H. Rear brakes. They match their Element 3 Ray Bestis. They match the coated rotors. I like to stay with the same manufacturer. If I'm using their rotors, I use the pads that are made for them. Pretty easy. Went through the parking brake a little bit on that. How I adjust it, because a couple of people asked about that. I'll link in one of my other videos where I show kind of pulling that adjuster apart. I don't know if it might be on drum brakes, but basically the parking brake on this is just like a set of drum brakes. It's really what it is. So it's inside the drum of the back rotor. So it's no different than doing drum brakes. It's really not. Pretty easy job. Like I said before, do your maintenance. This car, 292,000 miles. I just looked at it. Still runs really well. Still in really good shape. They do the maintenance, change oil when they're supposed to, do the brakes. Really good car. If you have to do this for your vehicle, I hope this helps you out. If you like the video, subscribe below. Thanks for watching.